This episode is powered by denmeditation.com. Though meditation is the primary focus, the bigger goal is for people to understand and love themselves, thus creating more harmony in the community at large. To find out more about Den Meditation's teacher training programs, retreats, and all things Den Meditation, go to denmeditation.com. Welcome to Den Talks Podcast. This is Tal, your host and the founder of Den Meditation. We have Liliane Fortna here today. She's had a very interesting life, which we talk about in this episode. What I love about her, and the reason I wanted to have her on, is she has been a creator of her own destiny, to use those words, from the beginning. She had a really rough upbringing. She was kind of left on her own, raised by a grandmother who was not very kind, and really took to nature and art very early on in her life. And those were her friends. And she talks a lot about it on the episode, actually, kind of how they came alive for her. And because of that, indirectly, without any training or someone telling her, she had this really, really, really deep spiritual connection, which she so beautifully followed. I called her the yes woman by the end. I mean, this is a woman who said yes to every opportunity that came her way that she really created, because she started doing this from the minute she was born, and she is now 74, and she is still doing this and still successful at it. And by this, I mean creating whatever it is that she wants in her life. She says in her book, Wings from Above, you are constantly being directed at all times. We all have things being put in front of us that are guiding us to somewhere else. But if you don't say yes, you don't go there. If you at all start kind of changing your perspective on things, please drop us a line and let us know. I hope you enjoy the episode. You've had such an interesting life in your book, Wings from Above, which talks about, like you were saying, synchronicities and paying attention to it. I want to dive into it a little bit because, there was so, and I know what you're going to respond with, but there was so much magic in your life. So many times where it was as if you were co-creating fantasies left and right, because from where you came from, and we'll talk about it specifically so people know what I'm referring to, but from where you came from and kind of the situation you were dealt to then, and it wasn't just one avenue, like multiple avenues of almost fantasy life of amazing career choices, the travels, the husbands, whatever it was, you had so much richness. And you say in the book, a lot of it was, using your guides and allowing your guides and following the synchronicities. So we'll get into it. But, by saying that, and I know what the answer is, but are you basically trying to tell everyone the magic life is for everybody? Like everyone has that access. Everyone's life can be guided by magic.
Well, until just a few years back, I did not think of guides or angels. I just had my intuition. I saw signs without knowing what it was. My intuition guided me. And I had a desire, and things happened, or things were offered to me to choose from. And I did not really question myself. I did when I was in my early 20s, but there was nobody I could talk with because everybody was either going to church, which I could not talk with because it was a little bit different. So I just kept silent and I went on with my life. And I continued to I wish something very strongly. Meditate connection with nature, which I started when I was a child. And when I'm in nature, I can think more clearly. It just helps me. There are many other things that help me, and I put them in the book, in the last part of the book on what to do. They are fairly simple. Everybody can do that. What I'm saying here is that we all have signs and synchronicity coming our way. For me, I was able to see them and continue to see them when I was an adult because of my childhood. To me, it was a matter of survival to be able to recognize what I should do or not, or getting an answer to questions I had. Children, when they're about 6, do lose that capacity that they have. Because of education, typically, or no, that's not right, or, they just lose that. For me, I never really lost it. And I continued, even though I was not with nature, because I went to Paris and nature wasn't there anymore. but there was art. So as a teenager, I was very involved with music, with painting, with writing, all that. And it nourished my soul just like nature did. And when I'm in such a state, I'm able to feel more. I'm able to ask questions, and suddenly I get an answer, or I see something that guides me towards what I want. So that's how it is. And I really started to understand when I was very sick a few years ago, and I was so depressed for a while. I was not able to think straight. And one doctor, and I described that in the book, said something that was so outrageous. It made me so mad. And it's good sometimes to be mad because I was back. I was going to fight it. I had a growth. At that time, I did not know it was a tumor because for a year and a half, nobody would say that word. Nobody could help me unless they made a hole in my palate to check what it was, remove it eventually, and then plug with a removable plug in my mouth.
Wow.
So I refused that. I said, "This is ridiculous. I mean, we are now in an age where we should know better." But anyway, so what the doctor said, the last one I saw, I was hoping that he could maybe give me another idea on what to do. And he did not even look at my mouth. He
Ugh.
looked at the computer and saw what other doctors had done and said, oh, in your case, oftentimes we have to remove this bone here, the maxillary bone, and then the teeth, of course, and then reconstructive surgery. And I didn't say anything. I was so shocked. But I was so mad. I became so mad that I was back into my own skin and I was able to think clearly. And I said, okay, what if I only have 1 year left? What do I want to achieve? 6 months, 2 years. So I was thinking that way. And suddenly things started to come, little signs. Oh, this is what you have to do, what to do. Things I did not think of before. I
Like
was
what?
go back to Belgium, where I had lived for 15 years and the medical system is excellent. Contact your doctor in Belgium, which I did. It was so interesting because he did not respond. So after 2 weeks, I thought, well, maybe, he was at the age of retiring. Maybe he retired or he doesn't have the same email. So I went to the gym. I remember it was pouring rain and I wanted to park as close to the door as possible. And suddenly I saw a car was going to pull out. It was not too far from the door. And I said, okay, well, I'll wait. A car passed me. There was another spot, two spots further, which I did not see. And that made me think, you move too fast.
Mm.
You contacted the doctor, you should have contacted another one. Sometimes there is connection with your thought. So I contacted a surgeon I knew. 3 days later, I had the answer. I sent your documents to a doctor who can help you. You call him. Here is this phone number, which I did. 2 weeks later, I saw him. And everything started to work beautifully. I mean, in 5 minutes, he told me it's a tumor. Sit over there. I sat. He put a probe in my nose and he was able to see right away what I had. He said, I don't think it's cancerous, but it should not stay. It has to be removed. And I will try to do a surgery via the nose. That way it won't damage your face. Now, if it were cancer, I'm not sure. But he said, I'm going to think about it and create a surgery and ask other doctors, because they meet every week, other doctors what they think, get their opinions, and we'll go from there. And then the surgery was done a few months later. And I did not even ask for a, a nice specific room. I just wanted to be alone in a room. They gave me the most beautiful room in the hospital. I mean, top floor with semicircular windows. I mean, it was just gorgeous. And the view on old Brussels with the tower of the 12th century, the sky, of course. I mean, it was gorgeous. And everything went so well. And I kept, signs were coming my way all the time to tell me it was going to be okay. Even the morning of the surgery, I meditated, I was ready, I was calm. And then suddenly I saw three crows playing in front of my window. The crow is my animal spirit.
Mm.
They were just playing, and then they went on a roof down below. And, I said, okay, good. And then as I was wheeled to the surgery room, I felt my archangels were with me. I felt Saint Michael, Saint Raphael, and Saint Gabriel were there with me. I felt like I was not wheeled, but more carried.
Mm.
And I knew it was going to be all right, even though it's a surgery that has never been done in the world, because that's something that they had never seen before. That's when I thought, you are so lucky. You've got to share that with others, but how? So I went back into my life and said, you've been lucky despite a lot of difficulties. You've been very lucky throughout your life,
Mm.
but why? So I had plenty of time to think, and I started to write down what I thought would be good to share with people. And I thought anybody has received the signs, but not everybody see them for many
Mm.
reasons. So that's what are the reasons? And that's why I created a book that is a teaching book as well. I'm preparing a course, 8-week course now that will be online. And the book comes with a workbook as well, so that people can write down things coming to their mind. And I try to encourage them, like part 2 of the book, you have
Mm.
points to ponder. And that's, sometimes people, oh yeah, it's something similar, or it makes them think of something that they had that is related. So point to ponder, and then exercises afterwards. I mean, part 3, where you have all the blockages, why we can't see them.
So you don't believe ultimately now, I don't know, maybe, and you could talk about prior in your life, you don't believe in luck now.
No, I don't. I think I think a lot of things are offered to us, and we always have the choice. So we choose what we think is the best for us. And throughout my life, I've done things that were, if I look back, I said, wow, that's extraordinary. So many dream of becoming, let's say, a model. Well, I'm not tall. I'm not tall. I'm 5'4". For a model, it was very short. But I I did not even go and knock at doors. I was invited to be part of a beauty contest. Invited. Then the day after the beauty contest, I got phone calls. Oh, we would like to work with you as a model. So I started to get phone calls, and it was up to me to say yes or no. But typically, when I feel that it's right, I say yes. And then I go, oh God, why did I say yes?
Yeah, what does that feel like for you? Like, what does yes feel like for you?
Well, I follow my intuition typically, because if there are several things, one might be very interesting, but sometimes I'm not too sure. Another one is very interesting, and I'm guided towards that. And okay, I make a choice. And afterwards, oh dear, why? Because I'm not necessarily the best, or I don't necessarily have all the knowledge, or.
Mm-hmm.
But then it's time to figure out, it's time to learn, it's time to get to that level. So that's what I've done all my life. And then it becomes exciting. The fear first, and then it's exciting.
And I wonder, like, right, and a lot of people, it's the fear comes before they make the choice, and then therefore they don't make the choice.
Mhm.
And for you, it's like you make the choice, and then you get the fear realizing like, oh shit, like now I got to make it happen.
Yes, oh my God, what did I do?
You've really created a lot of fantasy opportunities.
Well, we do create our life, really,
Mm-hmm.
bad and good. We do create it. I truly believe that, because it's been, now I'm 74, and I have to say that through my life, I've created great things. I've created things that were not quite as great, but that was also my fault if I look back, So we have the choice. We have the choice. We just have to set our mind in the right direction. That's very, very important. And our heart. I mean, mind is one thing, but our heart, our soul, we have to push it in the right direction.
Well, it's interesting because not only was it modeling, you also just decided maybe you'd be a dancer. Dancing is something usually people are doing from like the age of 3 on.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
how old were you when you decided to start? And then you were in some of the best companies.
I was in 1976. I was 27.
Yeah, like that's an old person as far as the dance
That's
world is
an old
concerned.
person. 27, and I just went to take an evening class, in the town where I lived, something just, I would stay at the back and, I would see, because I always wanted to dance, but I could not, because as a Catholic girl, it was not proper. So I wanted to dance since I was very little, but I could not. But the opportunity came, so I went, and the teacher said, "Oh, you've danced before?" I said, "No, not
Mm.
really." And after 3 months, she gave me classes to teach in high school, her classes to teach. And I was, oh my God, what do I do? Again, I had to invent myself, because I had to teach classes after 3 months of taking dance, not every day even. Um, and from there, she said, you have to do more than just take classes that way. You have to become a dancer. And she took me to Paris to introduce me to the school where she had graduated from. And I was accepted. So
Wow.
that's how it started. And after 3 years, I graduated, and I was invited to come to America, which I did.
I mean, it really is amazing.
It's one thing after the other, but because you put yourself in that situation, and if fear comes, you just fear go away, even though you sometimes you feel very uncomfortable. I would say, oh God, but you go through it, and you just do it.
How do you recommend that to someone? Because, like I said, you tend to get the fear after you've already made the choice, and then you're like, I got to do it. But how do you recommend for people to not let fear not even allow you to take that first step?
Well, I think what has to be done, and that's in my book, the third part, see what the blockages are. There are many ways to block ourselves, because when we are not open, if we are wide open, we see things. If we're not, it's like a gray cloud surrounding us and we can't see through. So the first thing to do is probably see what is blocking you to do things and why. Why are you fearful of certain things? Sometimes there is no reason. It's just something that has been learned. Like if you look at children, children can dance. They love to dance. You look at a little kid, put on music, and you'll see the little kid move around. Give them a pen, they'll draw. Give them paint, they'll paint. All that is in us. We just have to learn to manipulate it better, but it is within us. Yet, when you ask a lot of people around you, oh no, I can't paint, I can't dance, I can't. And oftentimes I say, have you tried?
Right.
And the answer is no. I say, how do you know you can't? And it's simply because at some point in their life, I believe, they've been blocked. See a lot of kids draw, paint, and then critics do come. Oh no, that's not the way you do this. Or now, and then you block yourself, because nobody wants rejection, nobody
Mhm.
wants criticism. So we stop. Dancing. Oh, no, no, that's not the way. So with my granddaughter now, I teach her to dance, but she takes ballet now. She's 5, she's starting. But I teach her the other way, which is improvisation with nature. So I take her, let's say, if we're on the beach, I have her play with the waves, but listen first. What is the sound of the waves? Look at above you. Do you see the birds? They're flying. So to incorporate all that, and then just keep moving. And she's having so much, and she's beautiful to look at. Sometimes she even closes her eyes and she smiles. It's beautiful because she feels the rhythm. You don't need music per se. The
Right.
sound of the birds can be music. The wind, you know, can be music. And then you have the touch of the elements. You can feel the wind. Let's say, how does it make you move, etc. So I'm teaching her that, and she's having so much fun. We have fun together, just to have fun because it's something natural. And I still dance. I go
Oh,
outside and just have fun because we have a body, we came with a body, and it's nice to be able to experience it instead of, oh no, I can't move, or
right.
it's much better. It's part of happiness.
But you talk a little bit about how what you were just saying, how, through, just being raised and through experience, we experience rejection. And so therefore we kind of start to reject things before. But it's interesting because you had a very tough upbringing and in
Mhm.
some ways experienced a lot of rejection. You weren't given a ton of love, you weren't given a ton of compassion. Um, and I'd love for you to talk about it a little bit, how you lived with your grandmother, correct?
Yeah,
And she was tough.
she
I know she did the best she could, but
no, no. Mhm.
love
Well,
that.
I don't think so. I think she was depressed, and she
Right,
had many reasons which later on I understood very well. She was depressed, but it was a time when depression, you didn't talk about that.
right.
So
No
there
one
was no
knew.
medication. And someone who is depressed has different ways of rewriting. Her way was being mean,
Right.
like revenge, mean. And since I was the only human being that she would interact most of the time, she talked to a few people, but not much. Her anger would always be directed at me. And yeah, she would beat me, she would not give me food, etc. But you know what? I learned because the beach was near with a lot of rocks, lots of food in the rocks, and there were lots of oysters. I learned later they're expensive, but I would go and open them and eat. There were
Wow.
oysters or other things that I would find on the beach. So I learned. And what happened with the people who hurt me, actually, for quite a while, I was very angry. I even had a major depression at some point because I tried to, no, no, depression is for sissies. I was just pushing that away until it caught up with me. And it was the best thing that could have happened because I was able to find myself again at the end of it. Um, but since then, I not only have forgiven my grandmother and the other people who hurt me, I thank them.
Mm.
I thank them because I would not be who I am today. Compassionate, wanting to help others. Uh, and I learned a lot. I had to learn a lot, to survive. So I had to learn a lot. It made me much stronger. And why not thank them? I mean, all these people are dead. Why should I live with the pain they inflicted on me? It only hurts me, nobody else. So why live with that? So I thought a lot about them, and I realized that it was not directed towards me. They had their
Right.
problems, and the anger had to come out. And since I was the only one there, it would come out towards me. So It was very hard as a child, and as a teenager, young adult, but then gradually I learned to look at it and say, well, it was not directed at me. These people are dead, so why should I live with the pain they inflicted on me?
But it's interesting because you somehow, and look, it was, you were raised by your grandmother, your dad came barely in and out. You found out later your mom was actually alive. I think you met her in your 40s, was it? I mean,
I
how
was
old?
48 when I first met her. And
Right.
yeah, so I met my half sibling. It was,
But you
yeah,
were very much on your own. Um, and I think through that, you realize, and correct me, please, whenever I'm saying something incorrect, you realize what an introvert you actually were. Like you like the solo time because as you got older and were around more people because you went off to boarding school, you really crave that time with nature and that time. So talk about, because what I find so interesting is the resilience that you had to then be able to create kind of these beautiful fantasy lives and then start to accept the signs, follow your intuition and know it. Again, what was the difference of you versus someone else who's kind of had this really hard upbringing and kind of gets stuck in it? And again, no one was training you, no one was teaching you about your guides, no one was teaching you about, winks from above. So it's like, talk a little bit more about, was it part of this kind of recluse is like of you, this idea of kind of like you really needed, like you'd escape when you were in Paris, you'd escape to the museums a lot. What was it about kind of art and nature that became your safety point? Do you think really was what allowed you, and maybe it wasn't, but do you think that was part of what it was that kind of gave you the tips in some ways without realizing it to have this ability?
I think nature and art do talk to the soul.
Mm.
And because they talk to the soul, my soul responds. So, for instance, as a child, um, trees would talk to me, animals would talk to
What
me.
would they say?
Well, I could not hear with my human ears. It was my inner ears that would hear, and I felt comfortable. I felt guided. I felt not alone. I had someone to talk with. I would not talk with my mouth. Just and I would get a response. Talk to the stars at night, the moon, the waves. I mean, all the elements of nature were alive to me. And
Mm.
because of that, they were my friends. At the time there was no TV. I had never watched TV until I was maybe 15. There was nothing like that. So anything that moved, or, not moved, but I felt was alive, like trees and anything around me, the sea or the wave, the beach, the rocks, everything would talk to me, even the insects. And I felt that we could communicate.
It was interesting, like reading your story and hearing kind of the shift of you, like, because you said you weren't allowed to talk. You didn't even know what it meant to have like camaraderie or to have other people around. And when you started to see like families together or people together, it was actually it was almost odd for you. And then you were saying it was kind of boarding school where you're all forced. I mean, you're forced to be together, which was the first time. And I thought it was interesting, especially anyone out there who is an introvert or knows introverts, like my daughter is introverted. I think it was interesting because you were talking about this idea that as you got older, you learned the skills you needed to fake it more, which I love those words because it wasn't that all of a sudden you learned how to love being in the social scenarios. You just learned what you needed to do to live in this world the way it was set up in a way that almost made it easier for other people and also for yourself, because I'm sure that's where a lot of opportunities came from because that's how people are comfortable giving them. Um,
Hmm.
but I found that interesting because then all of a sudden the tone of the book changes completely because it's like poof, poof, poof. You're on all these like adventures of life, really whatever in your mind, you're like, it's time for me to try that. Like I said, all of a sudden you're a professional dancer, all of a sudden you're a professional model, though I know different timeline. You're, in the Amazon, you want to be a healer, whatever it is, you want to adventure with a husband, you switch husband, whatever it is, um, you did. And you really were the master of your choices, and you still are, I'm sure. So I find it interesting. Talk a little bit about that idea of just understanding energetically what it is you needed, how to shift. But I love, it's not like you sold yourself out. You always retreated when you needed to. Like it said it. It's like sometimes I would say no to things because I knew I needed to be by myself or I needed to talk to the art. So talk a little bit about kind of this awareness of energetically what was happening around you and how you could fit in and not fit in.
The process of preparing me for a new persona is always exciting because you learn, you discover
Yeah.
things, and then you do it for a while. It's still interesting, but then start looking around and that's interesting too.
I'm like that. Yeah.
you know, and then and then suddenly I see opportunities leading to that. I say, okay, I'm in.
Right.
And it's I just follow guidance. Where does it come from? My higher self guides whatever. I don't know. I just follow whatever I feel here, and it doesn't deceive me. It's very rare that I went in a direction. I say, oh no, I need to retreat. No, I go full speed, give all my energy in one area and see what happens. And then I feel that everything is interconnected. You learn something here that will serve you in some next
Later.
thing you do. So that's interesting. It's never time wasted. That's why I feel, well, if I want to do that, I'll do it. Why not? I'm not defining myself as I'm such a person. I can shift. We all have so many different facets. That's part of ourselves. Unfortunately, most of us don't explore those different facets. And it's a waste because we have so
Mhm.
much in us that we could explore and share, but we don't. We don't because of blockages, because of it could be our upbringing, it could be so many different fear quite often is that I can't say suddenly I feel that I have to go that way. I'm very content with what I'm doing, and suddenly there is something that say, oh, that's also quite interesting. Let's see. Well, why not? And then suddenly I see signs leading me towards this way, this way, this way. Okay, here. So that's how I do. It's fairly simple because I don't block myself. See, if I were, I can't do this, I can't do that, it doesn't work if you block yourself. If there is something you like, but you're not necessarily good at it, or you don't have a lot of knowledge, just go for it and learn. We can learn until the day we cross over. So learn, be excited about learning because there are always a lot of exciting things to learn. And we discover so much more about ourselves by doing that.
Do you think, I have two questions off that. Do you think part of the reason from an early age you were so open to taking these chances and even then down later in life is even if fear crept in because you had like a harder upbringing? I don't know. Like it feels like you didn't really have, that solid place to land when you were younger. So you were always trusting in yourself because the only place to land was probably within you, I'm guessing.
And nature at that time, and then art. I could gross myself in a painting, enter the painting, go inside, see what's behind that house, etc. I could do that.
Wow.
And sometimes I would go to the Louvre, and then I would feel some of my friends in that painting would come down and walk with me. So we would go and things like that. So it was fun. It's always a lot of fun, but imagination is a big part of it.
Yeah.
So don't block the imagination. Anything can go. It just let it be, and then suddenly you see things that add to whatever you feel, whatever you have in your mind, and it's a new world.
I mean, that's huge. I think this idea, and it's a reminder for everyone, it's so connected to your imagination. I know I say in my classes a lot, like, whenever I lead like a visualization, I always say, don't stress about finding the right thing, or you can do it or don't, or not believing any messages you get because you feel like you somehow created them. Because I always say, your imagination is there for a reason. Like, you might have created it, but there's a reason you pulled it down, and it's still information for yourself. So no
Mhm.
matter how much you feel like, well, I'm just creative, I created it, it's still important and lovely, and it is from the beyond. And it's so true. It's like, if we do lose our imagination more and more, especially as we get older. But for you, it was just completely who you were.
And there is something, it's in my book. Use your imagination when you are facing things that are disagreeable. I'm not speaking about death or major, major things like that in life. We have to go through the process. But I'm talking of daily things happening, and it makes us in a bad mood for the rest of the day, things like that. So what I do, I just look at it and say, okay. For instance, when I had the tube into my stomach, I couldn't eat or drink anything.
Wow.
So, but I could smell. So when dinner or lunch was served in the hospital, I could smell it. But I decided I was okay. I was not going to suffer from that. So that pouch hanging there with that beige orange liquid, whatever it was, I decided that was my buffet line. So I could choose
Hilarious.
whatever I wanted to eat, not gain any weight. So I could choose. So tonight I'm going to have biscuit or whatever else. And even my husband would come oftentimes to during lunch time, and I say, "Why don't you bring your sandwich or what? I don't want to eat in front of you." So I'm not bothered, and I could look at him eat, and honestly, I was not bothered because of the mind games I was doing with myself. But I think it's very important. This is why I wrote the book, because I think we all have, to some extent, that capability, some maybe more than some others. But if I can reach many people and help them discover what they have deep inside, um, and help them to unblock themselves so they can be in contact, that would be fantastic. Because it does help me. It makes my life so much happier.
Well, I think something really beautiful too is, obviously you've been, how old did you say you were? You said earlier 74?
I'm 74, yeah.
74.
Yeah, but
And
still dance and do all kinds of things.
right, and you're still like, when did you start really diving into being a healer?
I was 50, 55, around that. I did not want to before. I was asked, but I was very afraid to be like my grandmother, who I believe had that capability. But because she was so messed up, she used it the wrong way. I have seen her do things that were very scary for a child. So when I grew up, and a healer, because I wouldn't see a doctor, I would go to a healer for anything, told me, you should follow my path. And I
Mm.
thought it was very kind, but I said, no. And it took me decades to say yes. And because I had the signs that came, you should be a healer, you should be, and each time no, 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 no. And the last time I became so sick for 5 months, until I could go see my healer in France. I was in Belgium, but I couldn't drive, and my husband was in Pakistan at the time. So I just could not go, and doctors had no idea how to treat me because they could not understand what I had. That's when I thought, well, it might be something related to something that is not physical necessarily. So when I went to see my healer, he told me, you understand now? I said, yes, I will follow the path.
Mm.
And, and I did. That's when I did. And things were easy. It's like I had done that before, the hand, the feeling, etc. What was very difficult is the work that you have to do on yourself, emotional, mental, it's spiritual, etc. Because you have to do so much cleanup. You cannot work with somebody if there is a wedge in between, like a person who looks a certain way, you don't like that. So when you try to heal the person,
Yeah.
it's there. You can't have any of that. You have to be totally free. So I had to work on all that. For instance, because I was a dancer, I was used to very taut and fit bodies. So to touch somebody was not fit, was not something agreeable. So
Right.
I
I get that.
so I told myself, girl, time to change your way. It's not their fault, it's your fault if you behave that way. So I registered to take massage classes with a healer,
Mm.
a shaman. I mean, he was teaching some classes, and he knew what what I wanted to work on. So he gave me the heaviest woman to work on for the day.
That's really good, though.
I
Smart.
had to work. At first, it was, oh God. And then gradually it was, oh, the curvature is beautiful. The color of the skin is beautiful. Suddenly I started to work differently. At the end of the day, I was okay. So that was one. But there were a lot of other things I had to work on that took much longer.
Interesting.
Like be kind to yourself with words as well. Not say, oh, you're so stupid. You do something. I had to revise that. Well, you should think before not use words because they are interpreted by the subconscious. So you should not treat yourself, other people either, but yourself too. So that was another things I had to work on, etc. I mean, there were so many things I had to work on in order to be free. When I'm with somebody, there is nothing that blocks me to work with that person. But it took much longer than to learn the technique. That was easy.
Also, in all of this, because I do think what's happening nowadays, and correct, I'd be curious to know your thoughts. There's so much changing. And I feel like, and I've brought this up a few times on the podcast, I feel like so many people are really looking to make changes career wise, what they're doing. It just feels like, and I think everyone's feeling that way. So even people of ages where normally you wouldn't switch careers or it might feel unsafe or what's the point to start now? I'm so behind, are having that itch and having that desire. You're like such a perfect person to talk about this with because I feel like you've always lived so fluidly and age has never stopped you and you've really achieved success in everything you've done. So talk a little bit about that and how people, let's say 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s can all still feel very confident in making changes, complete changes and starting quote unquote over.
Yeah, well, the discomfort comes from the fact that period of transitions are always very difficult because we don't know where we're going. So for some people, it's more difficult than for some other. For some, it might be more exciting. Some other people, I'm not sure, especially if you have responsibility like a family, etc. That makes it even more difficult. But if there is something that you really want to do, just do it. Of course, you have to think about your life, to have a family, etc. But still, start doing it a little bit at a time. Is it to learn a new skill? Well, do a little bit at a time until you're so good that you can shift. Um, Anybody can do anything they really want to do. And it's not always those who are the most talented in one area that will succeed. It's
Hmm.
those who get excited about that area and will work. I've seen that in healing. I've seen some people arrive with a shaman and, oh my God, so talented. I could feel the person was connected, etc. And I was, wow. But they did not want to do the work.
Mm.
And after 1 year or so, they have not progressed much.
Now, do you think when you connect to that energetically, Do you think they don't want to do the work because they just don't want to put the time into it? Or is there, or even though they're talented at it, is that just something they don't want to go into?
Well, there are different ways. Some people think they are talented. Why should they learn much more? That's one, ego. Another one could be it's not convenient to take the time now. I don't have the time for that. Or they don't want to put enough time. Or that's enough. I'll do a little bit here, a little bit there, So there are many reasons why people fail. And I think it's because they don't want to invest themselves, fully invest themselves in a new area. And for work, I cannot criticize because if I were in my 30s or 40s, I have a family, I want to change my job, that's a little bit different because you want the money to still flow in. That's part of our life. We need it. And when you have people who count on you, you have to support. You have to, you can't just be free and say, oh, I'm going to do that. No, you have to prepare yourself. Just keep that at the back of your mind. Get ready. Learn a lot. Learn a little bit at a time until maybe an opportunity will arise. Suddenly there is a proposition for that job. Then you go for it. But just to change because you don't like something, you want something else, you have to be reasonable in the sense that if you're alone, you're alone. It's your responsibility. But if you have people who count on you, then you have to plan slightly differently. You can't just change ship like that.
I appreciate you saying that because I do think that is a reality for a lot of people. So I think it's
Yeah,
great. I think it's good that you say that versus, the idea of like, no, you just go for it.
no, we have to be real. We came here as human beings, so we have to have the 2 feet on the ground. That doesn't mean we can't be connected, but we have to have the 2 feet on the ground so we can have a decent life
Right.
and be able to also help other. Because if we're always struggling because of what we're doing, we can't help other. So we have to be firmly planted and still look around and see, over there, that's interesting, but right now I can't. But let's keep an eye on in this area because at one point that would be certainly something I'd like to do. That do not block yourself. At some point, what you really desire to do might come, but you have to prepare yourself. If you have responsibility, just don't change because that's what you want to do without any guarantee. So
Right.
I want to be careful there.
Now you've had a couple, I think it was a couple bouts of depression, right? Where it really,
One very serious one. I was hospitalized for 3-4 months. No, I was hospitalized for 2 weeks. I went from the emergency hospital, staying in a hospital. Then I was placed, and again a synchronicity. I was placed in a hospital, it's a mental health clinic or whatever the name was. Never heard of that before. It's a beautiful place in Brussels. There is a little park around. The treatment is via art. So
wow.
first of all, I was 50, 51. They put me with 30 years old.
Well, you're so
Why?
young.
They were in another floor, so I was with the young people. So we could go to aerobics, we had dance, we had sculpture, modeling with
Yep.
clay, we had painting, we had music, meditation, writing and music, creative writing. We
All
had
the things for you.
all the time. And we had to leave everything we were doing in the studio. So our psychiatrist would come and she would see the progresses we were making via our art. And for instance, for me, at first I did not want to see anybody. I was in my room and then they said, well, when you feel ready to come, you don't have to participate. Just sit here and you can watch. They were not. And then somebody put some clay in front of me, and I touched. It felt like petting a cat almost. It
Right.
feels soft. And suddenly I had a face.
Wow.
And that face, I felt I had to put a veil on that face. I put a veil. So it was a life-size face. I put a veil here and a veil. Yeah, and a veil there. So it was blocked.
Yeah.
And then gradually I removed the veil and made a mouth, made eyes. And then the eyes were looking straight. And suddenly the mouth started to smile. The face went like that. And the eyes were looking up. So that's when the psychiatrist knew I was getting better.
That's really amazing.
Yeah, and that's I felt, and I did a lot of painting on the computer. I could have my computer with me. It was just a fantastic place. In the morning, I would go and dance in the park. It was just, I never heard of a place like that. I did not ask for a place like that. I just happened to be put in a place like that, you see? So that again was, where does that come from?
Yeah, that's really interesting. I mean, really interesting. I love that you literally had the veil over it and then it came off. If you could, especially because you're a healer now, as a healer, when you look at what you had going on in the roof of your mouth, what do you think energetically it was?
I wrote a blog lately about that. First of all, it's communication. I don't want to communicate. And that, of course, was in the roof of my mouth. Also, I really think it was communication right there. And it was growing inside my mouth as well in the palate. So I really think that speaking was, it was something that was telling me I had to communicate. Because I was just happy to be in my corner, not answer the phone, do my stuff. And something came up about 2 years ago. That was after the surgery. Wrote my book. So that's a year ago. It was published. And then I felt that, or was told that it would be very important to speak interviews or to give public speaking, to carry my book to a wider audience. And that in itself was so scary. Public speaking was making me sick. And I started having problem with my throat to a point that sometimes I couldn't talk, or I would talk with it was painful. And it went on forever. I did not know why. Until I realized that speaking, I could not speak during that time or speak well. And it was telling me that I have to work on that. So, first of the year, this year, my goal was, you're going to start public speaking this year. Well, interviews are not really public speaking, but since May, you are the 28th interview.
Look at that.
And a month ago, 3 weeks ago, for the launch of my third book, it's an anthology, but I met all the other authors at Life University, and I gave a 10 minutes speech. I was so scared.
I was going to ask how you felt.
I did it. And then now, last night I got something from Minnesota, a lady who has a group of parents who are grieving. So it's a help group. Mm-hmm. She read my book. She said, I think you should speak with them during a Zoom. So I answered and said, yes. Now I'm going to figure out. But I answered last night and I said, yes, I will. So I really have to um, learn to become a much better speaker, because the messages are not meant to hide behind words in a book. They have to be carried, and
Your
that's what
job.
I understood. And I don't have problem with my throat anymore since I made the decision.
I mean, I think, well, thank you. I mean, I've taken up so much of your time, but the message for me that's coming through all of this constantly is say yes. Like you've been saying yes your whole life.
Yes. Yes, I've been saying yes. And another thing to remember is that we are never alone.
Yes. Yes.
There's always, yes, there is always guidance somewhere, and it could come from something we don't think about. You're not feeling good, and suddenly you walk in the street and you have an animal come towards you and wants some love and looks at you with beautiful eyes, and suddenly you feel better. Little things. Um,
It's important to recognize that, like you were saying, you're not alone. Those things are presented to you because you're not alone. And so instead of avoiding it, embrace it. And I agree, when you realize you're not alone, it makes this whole experience so much easier.
yes, it makes life much easier
Yeah,
because, bad things, negativity will happen no matter what.
absolutely.
But if we know that we're not alone, we can always communicate. And sometimes the help comes from entities we don't expect, really. Last February, because of the surgery, I still have to have an MRI CAT scan every year. This year will be the last one. Um, I was in the machine. I was starting to panic. Could feel my heart, and I said, "No, you can't press on the ringer, because then you will have to do it again." So, and then I said, "Guides, I need help." And suddenly I felt warmth all around me. I felt my archangel was there. And then I heard a voice. Obama Pufi. That was my dad's voice, who passed away 5 years ago. He and I never got along well. But since he passed, I was told that he is among my guardians.
Mm-hmm.
And he was there. I said, "You're there?" "Yeah, I'm one of your guardians." And everything went fine. My heart rate, everything went fine. I was able to finish with no problem. So just by saying, "I need help," suddenly I got the help I needed, and did not have to stop. So oftentimes for little things like that, I call it little things in life, that's not something major, we can always call upon guides, angels, because we're not alone.
Look, you do so much good and you put so much out there. And the more you can teach all of us to kind of be able to step into the world and say yes, like you do, and listen to the signs, look at the signs, be open. I mean, it's really beautiful. So, I mean, so appreciative of you.
And thank you so much. I know that the people you try to interview, and what you like to share with the public is also something that all of us need
Um,
through the experience of other people. So what you're doing is really of a great service
oh,
to
thank you.
to the to the to humanity in many ways. So
I love it. I feel like I learn so much from these conversations, and I always hope that other people, and I know they are because we hear from them, that people do get really inspired. And that's always the goal is, there's so much to learn for all of us. Like you said, I'm always
there is
learning
so much
too.
and where we learn very well, it's from little kids,
Yeah.
little children. Sometimes we do forget some basics of life. And when you look at little children, I look at my granddaughter, it's so much fun to interact, because it brings out things I didn't think about.
Right.
For instance, one time she wanted to play in the grass, and there was a stink bug. And she was so afraid of stink bug. I said, "Okay, well, close your eyes, your hands on your heart, and now can you see the stink bug in your head? Can you see your stink bug?" "Yeah." Well, you just have to talk with her. Tell her you understand it's her home, but you want to play here for just a little while. That time, the stink bug was moving away, so I said, Olivia, look. The beauty in her eyes, it was so wonderful. And I said, now you can do that with almost anything.
Mm.
In your corner, put your hand on your heart, close your eyes, and then try to change things. Try to talk to whatever is bothering you.
Thank you.
Well,
This was a really lovely conversation, and I so appreciate your
thank you
time.
so much. Thank you so much. You are such a beautiful person.